I'm going to show you how to make a terrarium for an adult praying mantis. Here I've got all the materials ready that we're going to need. This here is the terrarium itself. Now most importantly, you need to pick a terrarium of the right size. So I'm making this for an adult Horrodula, which is about that big. And the most important thing is that it's at least 3 times as high as the length of the mantis. And that's because when it's molting, which is the most dangerous time for a mantis, you need to make sure that it's firstly got enough space to move out of its old skin, so that's twice the length, and then enough space to move its limbs around as well, so that they don't become malformed or harden in the wrong position or something like that. So the size, well this size should be pretty comfortable for an adult Horrodula. Another important thing about the terrarium is the circulating air. So you need holes at both sides in the top, and that's so that air can circulate throughout the cage. That's really, really important because a lot of these mantis come from hot, humid areas, and we want to have those conditions for them. We want to make it warm and we want to make it humid. But if it's humid inside this glass box and the air has nowhere to go, then you're going to have mould growing, and that's not very good for a mantis. It's quite dangerous. So holes on both sides so that the air can pass through. One thing that's really good about these terrariums is that you have this flap here, which you can open to put the food in. But of course it's really important to be able to take the whole top off as well, because when you need to clean it out, then you need to get right in there. And you need to be able to take out any dead food, anything that's rotting, because you don't want any dead animals inside with your live praying mantis. Okay, so that's the terrarium. You can get these from pet shops, or you can also get them from the website. Just make sure you get something big enough for it to move around. If you're going to have a pet, it's important that you give it the best conditions that you can. So I'd always go for something a little bit bigger than the necessary so that they've got room to move around. So the next thing that you need is something to put on the bottom, a substrate. And we use something which holds a lot of water, so that controls the humidity inside. If you keep that wet, then normally it will keep the inside wet enough for the mantis. This is coir, which is coconut husk, and all you do is you add water to it and then it expands to 5 times its size, so that will go a really long way. And when you put water with it, it becomes like this. That's a really nice substrate for all sorts of animals, but it's perfect for praying mantids because it holds the moisture and keeps the humidity. So that's what we're going to use on the bottom. Then, as I said, they like to climb. They're normally arboreal, so you need something for them to climb up. I have got some sticks here, which I just got from my garden. That's fine, you can get things from the garden. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, anything special. But if you are getting it from outside, you just need to be careful that there's no native animals on there, because obviously that could spread disease, or if it's a small mantis and you've got a big spider, something like that, you don't want it to be eaten. So just make sure there's nothing living on there that could spread disease or eat your mantis. You might want to give it a bit of a rinse just to make sure, but that should be fine. What else do we have here? Well, as I said before, they often come from hot climates. So here we're providing our heat source by a heat mat, and that's lovely and warm because it's plugged in down there. Your room might be warm enough. They only need about, well, most of them only need about 21 to 22 degrees. So your house might be warm enough for that. But to make sure, you should put a thermometer in the back of the cage, and then you'll be able to look on that and see if you are at the right temperature. If you're not at the right temperature, then you need a heat source like a heat mat. For example, when your heating's off, when you're out of the house, it's important to make sure that it's not hot just when you're there. Like if you go out and the heating's off, you need to make sure there's going to be enough temperature in there for the mantis. And the equivalent of a thermometer for humidity is called a hygrometer. And you can put one of these in there, and it tells you the percentage of humidity. It's also got a dry, moderate and humid gauge. So you want it between moderate and humid, about 70% humidity. And you'll want a water spray so that you can keep it at that humidity. So you just put a spray in if you can see on your hygrometer that it's getting too low. Okay, so I think now we can put everything together and I can show you what it'll look like. Firstly, we're going to put the substrate in the bottom. It doesn't really matter how much substrate you put in because the mantis is almost never going to be on the bottom because they don't really walk along the floor. It's mainly, like I said before, just to keep the humidity. So, I mean, that's a nice covering, it also makes it look nice. But I wouldn't worry too much about the depth, about measuring it. About there, looks about right. So, that looks good. That's going to keep it nice and humid in there. That coir is going to hold the water really well. The next thing we need to do is to put in the climbing apparatus. So, just untangle these. Put lots of different sticks in so they've got different places to go because it must be a bit of a boring life being a mantis. I had some secateurs somewhere. Right, so just put them in. Trim the tops. You know, you need to be really careful at this point. If you're putting things in that go right to the top of the terrarium, you need to make sure that there aren't any holes in the lid that are bigger than the size of the mantis, because obviously if you've got holes and you're giving it a way to climb to the top of the terrarium, then it's going to take advantage of that and you might have an escapee. So just be a bit careful. That, I mean, obviously you can see these holes are very small. There's no way a horologier is going to get through that. But also, it's not just your mantis that's going to be able to climb up here. Obviously any food that you put in for the mantis is going to be able to climb up there as well. So be a bit aware of the size of crickets that you're putting in and the size of the holes as well, because even though you're putting this in for your mantis to climb, the crickets will take advantage of that as well. And obviously arrange it however you want, make it look pretty. I think that looks quite nice. Lots of places for it to climb. Right, so I think next we should put the thermometer in to see what kind of temperature we're getting. So put that at the back there. And what reading are we getting? That says about 22. So it's nice and warm, so we don't need to put a heat mat. But say you were to put a heat mat underneath, you plug that in, that's already plugged in down there, so it's nice and warm. And just pop that underneath the terrarium, and then that heat will rise and fill the whole thing. And it's exactly the same thing for humidity. So we'll put that one at the other side. And that says 50. So that's not quite humid enough. So that's where my water comes in. Spray a few sprays of that in there and put the lid in and wait and see if that changes. Temperature 22, perfect. Humidity 70, excellent. I think the terrarium is ready for its new occupant. So, come here lady, let's see what she thinks of her new home.